All right. Today, we're going to practice using a couple of vocabulary strategies to help us find the meaning of unknown words in the book Teammates. It's by Peter Golenbach, and this is out of Open Court Reading. And so I thought this would be a good book to look at, and it has a lot of interesting words that we can use a variety of different skills to help us find out. So the ones we're going to be using today, we're going to use context clues, which is looking at the passage and the different known words we know and the different concepts they're talking about to help us find out the meaning of an unknown word. Structural analysis, which we can use, also called morphology. It helps us to find words by looking at the roots of the word that we know and the affixes or the beginning or ending parts of a word. Classifying, we might look at what part of speech it is, whether it's a noun or a verb, and see if that helps us find out. Or we might use the glossary. And the back of this book has a glossary that helps with vocab words. So we're going to begin, and we have a couple of words that we're going to be going through as we go through this. So I'm going to begin by reading this quote by Pee Wee Reese at the beginning of the book, one of Jackie Robinson's teammates. And I'm going to read the sentence and then highlight a word that I didn't know the meaning of until we use some skills to find it out. Jackie Robinson was more than just my teammate. He had a tremendous amount of talent, ability, and dedication. And so tremendous is one of those words we might not know. So I can use context clues to find out this one. I don't know exactly what it is, but looking at what it's saying, it's an amount, and it seems to be used in a positive setting here. So it's saying he had a tremendous amount of talent, ability, and dedication. So I think that means it's a great quantity or it's a huge amount. So I'm going to say the definition is huge. That was used with context. The reading on Jackie set a standard for future generations of ball players. He was a winner. Jackie Robinson was also a man. That was Pee Wee Reese. There's that first. So I'm going to read on. Once upon a time in America, when automobiles were black and looked like tanks, and laundry was white and hung on clotheslines to dry, there were two wonderful baseball leagues that no longer exist. They were called the Negro Leagues. And so I'm going to go back, and another word I found that might be unfamiliar is automobiles. And so looking at this one, we're going to use a different trick to solve this one. We're going to, well, actually, we're going to use the same one, but different context clues for this one. So this one, automobiles they're described as black and looking like tanks. And I'm going to say that is a car. Thinking about like what I know about older cars and pictures I've seen, they were kind of big and bulky. I have an older-ish car and it's very huge. And so I'm going to go and say that that one is a car. And also, if we were going to bring in a little bit of one of our other ones, structural analysis, I could also say that auto is something that is usually associated with cars, like automotive care, something that I picked up on. All right, I'm going to read on. The Negro Leagues had extraordinary players, and adoring fans came to see them wherever they played. They were heroes, but players in the Negro Leagues did not make much money, and their lives on the road were hard. So I'm going to go back to that first sentence. The Negro Leagues had extraordinary players. Extraordinary is another word we can use some of our skills to understand. So this one, we're going to use structural analysis to understand. And extraordinary is made up of two parts, extra and ordinary. So one meaning of extra is greater. So this can be read as greater than ordinary. So they had not just regular players, but they had greater than ordinary players. They had wonderful players. They had special players. So that's how I ended up defining this one. So I'm going to read on a little bit farther. Laws against segregation did not exist in the 1940s. In many places in this country, Black people were not allowed to go to the same schools and churches as white people. They could not sit in the front of a bus or a trolley car. They could not drink from the same drinking fountains that white people drink from. I'm going to go back and look at segregation. Segregation is a larger word, and there's maybe some stuff I can use in the text to find out, but for a word like this, it kind of seems like it has a specific use. So I'm actually going to flip. I'm going to take the book and flip over to this back section. And I looked for it earlier, but you can go, you want to start by looking at the first letter and going to that. And so I found the S, and then I looked for the next letter was E. So I tracked it all the way over here, and I found segregation means keeping people of different races apart from each other. So I went over here and I filled in my definition. Now I'm going to flip back. Awesome. And I'm going to flip over to this next page. Back then, many hotels didn't rent rooms to Black people, so the Negro League players slept in their cars. Many towns had no restaurants that would serve them, so they often had to eat meals that they could buy and carry with them. Life was very different for the players in the major leagues. They were the leagues for white players. Compared to the Negro League players, white players were paid very well. They stayed in good hotels and ate in fine restaurants. Their pictures were put on baseball cards, and the best players became famous all over the world. Many Americans knew that racial prejudice was wrong, but very few dared to challenge openly the way things were, and many people were apathetic about racial problems. Some feared that it could be dangerous to object. Vigilante groups like the Ku Klux Klan reacted violently against those who tried to change the way Blacks were treated. So that paragraph had a couple of different ones that we could look at. And we might go back later and look at some of those and figure out the best ways to figure them out. But let's look at vigilante. And this is how we're going to figure out our last skill that we can use. So this one is going to, if we look back, we're going to use classifying. So vigilante groups like the Ku Klux Klan reacted violently against those who tried to change the way Blacks were treated. So a vigilante is someone who goes out and acts as if they were part of the law. And if you do vigilantism, that is an example of where you try and take the law into your own hands. So there's a little bit of the action with that, and you see that they did so violently. So that's a little bit of a verb. This is also one where we can use some context clues. So good things to keep in mind. A lot of these kind of overlap and kind of crisscross on how we can use them. So if we were going to move on into our guided practice, we would start and we would go further into this text and look at intimidate, savior, and humiliation, which come up on the next pages. And what we will do for this section is go and read it together and decide on a strategy to use. And we can figure out which ways that we can say which way is the best strategy that we can use. So we've gotten to look at a couple of different strategies. Some things that maybe help us determine what a good strategy is our knowledge on the subject, how much we know. Like I was able to know about automobile because I've seen older cars. I have an older car, and different things like that. For extraordinary, I could use structural analysis for that one because I know about what extra means and what ordinary means. So, and for some of these, like glossary can be really helpful, but your glossary might not have the word you're looking for. So a couple different things to look at, and this will be very helpful when we indeed move into our guided practice.